You wake up. You check your bank account. Your salary came in 3 days ago and somehow most of it is already gone. Rent. Food. Subscriptions. Gas. Debt payments. Random purchases you barely remember making. And now you're telling yourself the same thing millions of people tell themselves every month: I just need to earn more. Here's the problem. Most people do earn more eventually. And they still stay broke. Look, this is the part nobody wants to admit. Income alone does not create wealth. Assets create wealth. A salary pays your bills. Assets pay for your life. That's the difference. And if you don't understand that difference early, you can spend 40 years working harder while somebody else who earns less quietly becomes financially free. My name is Jack and I spend way too much time thinking about money systems, assets, financial psychology, and why intelligent people stay trapped financially for decades. If you're someone who works hard but feels like you're financially running in place no matter how much effort you put in, hit subscribe and let's get into this. Because what most people call financial stability is actually controlled dependency. Here's what most people don't realize. When you rely entirely on a paycheck, your survival depends on continuously selling your time. That means the moment you stop working, the income stops. That is not freedom. That is rented survival. Think about it. If a person makes $5,000 per month from salary but spends $4,700 every month, they are one emergency away from panic. Now compare that to someone making $3,500 per month but owning assets generating another $2,000 automatically. Who is safer? The second person. Every time. Because assets reduce dependency. And dependency is the real risk. This is where it gets really interesting. Most people think rich people became wealthy because they earned huge salaries. But according to multiple wealth studies, a large percentage of millionaires are business owners, investors, or asset holders. Not employees. Why? Because assets scale. Human labor does not. You can only work so many hours. A digital product can sell forever. A stock portfolio can grow while you sleep. Rental income can continue monthly. Royalties continue. Businesses continue. Systems continue. Employees trade time. Owners build machines. That's the difference. Now you might be thinking, okay, but I don't have money to build assets. That's exactly what almost everyone says. And that belief destroys people financially. Because they imagine assets as something only rich people can buy. Apartment buildings. Huge stock portfolios. Businesses. But assets often begin extremely small. A YouTube channel is an asset. A digital product is an asset. A skill that generates recurring income is an asset. A dividend portfolio is an asset. An audience is an asset. A website is an asset. Even knowledge itself can become an asset if it creates future income. The real problem is that people consume before they build. That destroys them. The average person increases spending faster than asset ownership. And this creates a dangerous cycle. More income. More lifestyle upgrades. More expenses. More dependency. More pressure. More fear. More work. That cycle can continue for decades. Look at lifestyle inflation. Someone gets a raise from $4,000 monthly to $6,000 monthly. Sounds amazing. But suddenly they move into a more expensive apartment. Buy a better car. Eat out more. Upgrade clothes. Finance expensive electronics. Take bigger vacations. Now their expenses rise from $3,500 to $5,800. They are still trapped. This happens constantly. According to behavioral finance research, spending tends to rise with income unless intentionally controlled. Humans adapt extremely fast. What once felt luxurious becomes normal. That's dangerous. Because normal expenses become permanent obligations. And obligations reduce freedom. Here's the thing. Poor people often think wealth looks rich. Real wealth often looks boring. Quiet investing. Consistent ownership. Delayed gratification. Cash flow systems. Long-term thinking. Most financially successful people understand one brutal reality: consumption makes you look rich temporarily. Assets make you rich permanently. Big difference. Let's do simple math. Person A buys a $900 car payment. Person B invests $900 monthly into index funds averaging 10% annually. After 20 years, Person B potentially has hundreds of thousands of dollars. Person A has old cars and memories of payments. That's how wealth gaps form. Not overnight. Repeated financial direction. That's it. Tiny decisions repeated for years. Now let's talk about the psychological trap keeping people poor. Dopamine spending. Modern companies understand human psychology better than humans understand themselves. Notifications. Limited time offers. Luxury marketing. Social validation. Status pressure. Everything is engineered to trigger emotional spending. People don't buy products. They buy identity. They buy status. They buy emotional relief. They buy temporary escape. That's why emotional spending destroys financial futures. Someone feels stressed. They shop. Feel insecure. They upgrade something. Feel behind socially. They overspend. Meanwhile, asset builders think differently. Instead of asking, "What can I buy?" they ask, "What can this money become?" That question changes everything. Because money is stored potential. Every dollar spent has opportunity cost. A $200 impulse purchase is not just $200. If invested at 10% annually for 30 years, that same money could become thousands. People ignore this constantly. And that's why small financial leaks become massive long-term damage. This is where most people get trapped forever. They optimize survival instead of ownership. They focus only on earning more instead of acquiring systems. Look. A higher salary helps. Of course it does. But without asset creation, income alone rarely creates freedom. Doctors making huge salaries still go bankrupt. Athletes go broke. Celebrities collapse financially. Why? High income without financial structure becomes high-speed destruction. Now let's talk about the real path to building assets from zero. First step, increase the gap between income and spending. Without this gap, nothing changes. No investing. No ownership. No asset growth. No future leverage. This is critical. Most people try investing while maintaining destructive spending habits. Doesn't work. You cannot build wealth while leaking money everywhere. Track spending honestly. Not emotionally. Objectively. You need to know exactly where money goes. Most people underestimate spending massively. Coffee. Subscriptions. Delivery apps. Impulse purchases. Interest payments. Convenience spending. Small leaks compound aggressively. Now here's what most people don't realize. The goal is not extreme deprivation. The goal is strategic allocation. Big difference. You don't need to live miserably. You need intentional direction. Second step, build income-producing skills. Skills are assets. Especially scalable skills. Writing. Sales. Editing. Marketing. Programming. Design. Communication. Content creation. These skills can eventually generate independent income. And independent income creates leverage. Leverage matters. Because leverage separates workers from owners. A worker gets paid once. An owner can get paid repeatedly. Huge difference. Third step, acquire small assets consistently. This is where people fail psychologically. They want huge results immediately. That mindset destroys consistency. Real wealth compounds slowly before becoming visible. At first it feels pointless. Then suddenly momentum appears. For example, $300 invested monthly at 10% annual return becomes significant over decades. Most people ignore this because humans struggle understanding exponential growth. We think linearly. Wealth grows exponentially. That's why patience becomes a financial advantage. Now let's destroy another myth. Owning liabilities disguised as assets. This destroys people constantly. A luxury car is usually not an asset. If it loses value and drains money monthly, it's likely a liability. Expensive status purchases often create negative cash flow. Real assets usually generate value or income. That distinction matters. A business generating cash flow. Asset. Dividend-producing investments. Asset. Intellectual property generating royalties. Asset. Something consuming money continuously while depreciating. Usually liability. Now let's talk about time. Time matters more than income for investing. A person investing early often beats someone investing larger amounts later. Because compounding needs time. Example. Person A invests $300 monthly starting at 22. Person B invests $600 monthly starting at 35. And most people waste their most powerful financial years consuming instead of building. Huge mistake. Now here's another dangerous trap. Waiting to feel ready. People delay investing because they think, I'll start later when I make more. Later becomes years. Years become decades. Inflation destroys purchasing power meanwhile. Opportunities disappear. And fear grows stronger. Action reduces fear. Delay strengthens fear. Now let's discuss financial identity. This matters more than people think. If someone internally identifies as bad with money, their behavior often follows that identity. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcomes. Wealthy thinking is not about pretending to be rich. It's about understanding systems. For example, financially intelligent people understand debt differently. Some debt destroys. Some debt creates leverage. Consumer debt often traps people. High-interest debt is brutal. Credit cards charging 20% interest can financially suffocate people for years. Meanwhile, strategic debt used carefully for productive assets can create growth. Big difference. Now let's talk about emergency funds. People ignore this constantly. Without emergency reserves, one crisis destroys progress. Car breakdown. Medical issue. Job loss. Unexpected expenses. Then people use credit cards. Debt grows. Stress grows. Financial progress resets. Emergency savings create stability. Stability protects investments. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Financial freedom is not necessarily about becoming ultra-rich. It's about reducing dependency enough that fear loses control over your decisions. That changes everything psychologically. When survival pressure decreases, decision quality improves. Desperate people make desperate financial choices. Freedom improves strategic thinking. Now let's talk about automation. Automation is powerful because humans are emotional. Automatic investing removes emotional interference. People sabotage themselves constantly trying to time markets emotionally. Fear during crashes. Greed during bubbles. Panic selling. Impulse buying. Automated investing creates consistency. Consistency beats emotional chaos. Another important point. Social environments affect spending behavior massively. If everyone around you normalizes overspending, financial discipline becomes harder. Humans imitate behavior constantly. That's why many people stay trapped socially and financially. They spend to belong. But belonging through spending is expensive. And temporary. Now let's talk about invisible wealth. This is powerful. Some of the wealthiest people appear financially ordinary. Meanwhile, deeply broke people often appear wealthy externally. Cars mean nothing. Clothes mean nothing. Real wealth is ownership. Cash flow. Assets. Investments. Low dependency. That's real financial strength. Now you might be thinking, okay, but building assets takes too long. Yes. Sometimes it does. But staying broke also takes decades. Choose your difficulty. Because time passes anyway. Here's another reality. Most people underestimate what consistent effort can create in 10 years. 10 years of asset building can completely change a financial future. But most people never stay consistent long enough to see results. That's why discipline becomes rare value. Now let's discuss inflation properly. Inflation silently punishes savers who do nothing productive with money. If inflation averages 3% yearly, cash loses purchasing power over time. That means doing nothing has cost. People think avoiding investing feels safe. Sometimes it's financially dangerous long-term. Now obviously investing carries risk. But ignorance also carries risk. Dependency carries risk. No assets carries risk. Everything has risk. The question is which risk creates better odds long-term. Now let's talk about ownership psychology. Employees think about paychecks. Owners think about systems. Employees ask, how much do I make? Owners ask, how many systems produce income? That mental shift matters enormously. Now here's one of the biggest financial lies ever sold: buy things to reward yourself. This mentality destroys wealth creation. Because people begin associating spending with emotional relief, that becomes addictive. Instead of rewarding progress through consumption, intelligent people often reward progress through increased ownership. Different psychology. Now let's discuss attention. Attention is economic power now. Audiences can become assets. Content can become assets. Knowledge distribution can become assets. The modern economy changed massively. One person with leverage online can outperform traditional income systems. That opportunity did not exist decades ago. Now obviously not everyone becomes massively successful online. But the principle matters. Scalable systems matter. Now let's talk about fear of failure. This stops people from building assets constantly. Fear of starting businesses. Fear of investing. Fear of looking stupid. Fear keeps people dependent. And dependency often feels safer temporarily. But long-term dependency creates vulnerability. Now let's discuss financial stress biologically. Chronic money stress affects health. Sleep quality decreases. Anxiety increases. Decision-making worsens. Relationships suffer. Financial instability affects entire lives. That's why ownership matters beyond money itself. Now here's what most people never calculate. The true cost of wasted years. If someone delays investing for 10 years, the lost compound growth can become enormous. Time lost cannot be recovered easily. That's why early financial education matters desperately. Unfortunately, most schools teach almost nothing about real financial systems. People learn algebra. But not investing. Not taxes. Not leverage. Not compounding. Not financial psychology. And then society wonders why people struggle financially. Now let's end with something important. Building assets from nothing is difficult. Yes. But it is possible, and it begins with changing financial direction before changing financial size. Direction matters first. Small ownership grows. Tiny investments grow. Skills grow. Systems grow. But only if consistently maintained. The people who eventually escape financial stress usually understand one thing earlier than everyone else: money alone is fragile. Ownership is powerful. And once you understand that deeply, you stop chasing appearances and start building systems. That's the shift. That's the difference. That's how people slowly escape dependency and build real financial freedom over time.